While police continue to track down those responsible across Europe, attention will switch to why a generation of young, angry Muslims is being successfully recruited to carry out these terrible attacks. The London-based organisation Quilliam is a think tank aimed at countering extremism. Haras Rafiq is the Institute's managing director. He also advised the British government in the wake of the terrorism attacks in London a decade ago, and he joins us now from Manchester. Good evening, Haras Rafiq. Thanks for talking to 7:30. Some commentators are saying this is Europe's 9/11. What do you think?
I think that this is unfortunate that what we're living in right now is a global jihadist insurgency. It's not just Europe, it's everywhere. These people are operating on a social media platform and a transmedia platform and are able to recruit and send people out anywhere in the world. The other thing I do want to point out, though, is that no insurgency can actually have any kind of sustainability unless it has some form of support, and there is support. There is support for this particular ideology. There is support for this particular form of jihadism as opposed to jihad, and I think that this is a severe attack on Europe. It's a severe attack around for everybody else around the world. But there have been other bigger attacks with more casualties in Spain and other places. But it's certainly the method and the way that the attacks have been carried out the other night in France, in Paris, that really is the most shocking thing that Europeans have to face up to.
Now, your organisation predicted that something like this would happen. Coordinated attacks were likely. Why did you think it was likely?
Well, we saw a change in tactics after Mumbai. We saw that before Mumbai, the tactics that people had who were carrying out international jihadism was really around blowing themselves up and actually causing as much and maximum damage as they could do and maximum casualties. We saw that in London in 7/7, we saw it in Spain, and we saw it in Boston. After Mumbai, we saw that there were more and more people that were being sympathetic, more and more people that were actually buying into the whole Islamist ideology and the worldview. And there was chatter, there were calls for people to be carrying out these attacks around the world. No longer did an individual have to go to Iraq or Syria or somewhere else, or Afghanistan in the past, and receive indoctrination into this particular worldview. This could happen anywhere around the world, and we saw that people were calling for people from the Islamic State now, the so-called Islamic State, were calling for people to carry out these attacks. And we know that in the UK, in the last 7 months alone, there have been at least 6 attacks that have been foiled. So there's plenty of chatter, there was plenty of evidence, and the worldview and the ideology was being marketed to people in a lot more effective manner.
Yes, as you say, the British Prime Minister has said that 7 attacks have been foiled in the last 6 months. The French Prime Minister has warned tonight that future attacks are also planned. Can these attacks be prevented?
Yeah, the only way we can prevent this, if we think about this battle on 2 fronts, there is a front that's involving the security, because obviously for any government, its first priority is the security of its citizens. And the French authorities, the European authorities, the international authorities around the world have to do whatever they can to ensure that their citizens are safe. And that means increasing the capacity of the agencies, the police, etc. But if we're going to win this battle long term, and we really want to prevent these attacks, we've got to tackle this ideology head on. This ideology that the only way that people can be Muslims is to belong to this gang, if you like, this Islamist gang that wants to enforce their particular version of Sharia and spread it around the world. And this is really contemporary, it's new, it's not old. And somewhere in between the far left, the regressive left apologist, and the far right, who would actually blame all Muslims and Islam per se, we need to find a balance, and civil society needs to come up with counter messages, deconstruct the narrative, promote the counter messages, and also some sort of alternatives, and prevent charismatic recruiters from recruiting our youngsters Muslim and non-Muslim, because let's not forget there are a number of 20% of the people in France that actually go and join ISIS are actually people who've converted to the faith and to this particular ideology. We need, as a civil society, to provide this alternative and challenge it in the same way that we challenge racism, fascism, or any other ism.
Well, all Western nations are struggling with radicalisation right now. Young teenagers who are born in countries, yet they're raised in peaceful countries like Australia and the UK, but they turn against their fellow citizens. Why is the message of tolerance and moderation so abhorrent to them?
Well, initially, if you look at the radicalisation process, there are individuals, Muslim and non-Muslim, around the world that have either genuine grievances, partial grievances, or even perceived grievances. And this is the case for all youngsters, not just Muslim. And there are charismatic recruiters that will hone in on these, that will actually explain to them and give them a home and groom them into a particular worldview that says, do you know what? The only way that you can be a Muslim, the only way you can find an identity, the only way that you can have a belonging to something is to belong to our group and create this otherization, and then say that everybody else who's not the same as them is actually implicit in some sort of oppression, and that they have to fight back. And of course, if we look at the whole psychological makeup of these individuals, a lot of these people want to actually belong to something, and they belong to this gang, and they're taught that once you're part of this gang, you have to respond to this perceived oppression. And of course, let's not forget, a number of people are honing in on people with mental health issues as well. You know, if we look at one particular country that we did some work with in Europe, they discovered that over 40% of their convicted Islamist terrorists have now been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. For me, this whole process is about recruitment and grooming to a gang, using the Islamist worldview and the Salafi jihadi theology to justify it, to say that, you know what, God wants you to do it and God will reward you for doing it.
Haras Rafiq, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for talking to 7:30 tonight.
My pleasure.
To ask us a question or to find out more about the Quilliam Foundation and the work we are doing to counter extremism, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter or visit our website.